customers saying, we just don't like you anymore. We just don't want to deal with you. I don't love the whole personalized pricing thing. Unless they have a price and they're giving me a discount, I'll take that. But I don't like it the other way.
Like if we think about the point about culture and like why companies might be doing this, like, look, companies are in business to make money and to be efficient. But I think what can inadvertently happen, even with good intentions, is this whole conversation around inequity.
I think that, again, it goes to transparency, but it's just like letting people know what the fees are, because I did see there was recently on social media a whole thing, Elaine, about Airbnb and the fees. Beautiful Airbnb in the countryside, it was $150 for a night. And then I got my bill after 2 nights there and it was, $1,500, right? And they're thinking it's going to be like $300, $400, right? With a couple fees. But then the fees were so high, they were like, what a joke. I should have just gone to a hotel.
Monopoly, in quotes, is not such a bad idea if it benefits the consumer. So a company like Ticketmaster has economies of scale, and then they can lower the prices and keep everything reasonable and do some standardization from market to market, things like that. I could see them, everyone wins in that situation. But when it's a monopoly where prices are not only high, but they're arbitrarily high, it's a problem.
Welcome to We Fixed It. You're welcome. The show where we take over companies, you come along for the ride, and we try to put them back better than we found them.
How much do things cost today? A lot. But exactly how much? We don't know. And that's because of the clever pricing tactics that companies like the ones we're here to discuss today have been using for a long time, and now more than ever. And we just keep paying. Some of these price manipulations are pretty blatant, like Ticketmaster's legendary junk fees and alleged double dipping on ticket sales, and some methods are more subtle. Hello, digital price tags. We're going to fix this and decide whether I should pay exactly what you pay, or whether ambiguous pricing is just fair game in the name of profitability. To do this, we're going to need some help on the financial side. Our guest today is a fractional CFO. She knows her way around financial operations. As a CFO, she's worked in tech, media, retail, you name it. I'll let her tell you more. Please say hello to Elaine Bogart. Hi, Elaine. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, thanks, Aaron. And hi, everybody. As you said, I'm Elaine Bogart. I'm a fractional CFO. I work in a lot of different industries. A lot of digital media, creator economy, tech. I work with founders and CEOs and executive teams on leading all of their financial operations, on their strategy, M&A, if they're going to buy a company or spin out part of their company. And I spend a lot of time on working with startups on their runway and burn. So really, any company that's growing or transitioning, I work with all kinds of them. And from the finance side, yeah.
That's going to come into play today. I know it. Thank you, Elaine. It's great to have you here with us. So, all right, we have a lot to talk about. Let's start with Ticketmaster. They've been called out recently for 2 reasons. The first is those sneaky fees that were getting tacked onto the price of tickets. So what you see when you see the ticket price isn't what you wind up paying on the way out, including that arbitrary seeming convenience fee, which could be anything that they choose that, who's it convenient for? Not me. And the second is allegedly letting scalper accounts pick up the bulk of tickets at the time they are dropped and then reselling those same tickets in the Ticketmaster marketplace at an inflated price, which means that you and I, all of us, never had a chance of getting tickets at face value in the first place. And Ticketmaster just got paid twice for that same ticket, which is a pretty sweet deal for them, but not for the rest of us. So we're starting to see crackdowns and increased consumer protections on these types of practices. But that's only one example. So Ticketmaster and other companies have also been known to use surge pricing. So if something's popular or I really want it right now, I'm going to pay more than you. Or personalized pricing, like using our own user data to sell the exact same thing at a different price from someone else. Is that fair? I don't know. We've got a lot of examples. We've got a lot of opinions. Why don't we get into it? So let's start, Melissa. Let's think about the customer experience first. So you and I, we both order the same thing. We both pay different amounts. Word gets out. So we post about it, or, hey, I got a good deal. And you say, I got a better deal. Are we justifiably outraged, or should companies be able to charge what they want, to whom they want, and when they want?
Well, obviously, I don't agree with that process. I do understand demand pricing. Okay. So I do understand that when the demand is high, there's a need for that. But I feel like part of the issue, and it continues to be an issue in a lot of different operations, is transparency. That's just not understanding. And so I know that they are passing laws about having all-in fees being very transparent and available. I mean, this whole Ticketmaster thing is quite a mess. But I do think it's very complicated. So I do think that we have to think about from the perspective of the business. So from the perspective of Ticketmaster, I'm not trying to be devil's advocate here, but also from the perspective of the consumer. And so, the consumer is the one driving the higher demand. And it's just the way that it's actually distributed and then it's actually being implemented, to me, is the main problem that we have to fix, because I don't necessarily disagree with some of the surge pricing. I think that it can be done in a way that makes sense. For example, with Uber and with some of the ride sharing companies, that it's going to be more expensive when there's high demand at rush hour or during commute times. But that's very clear, and they share that with you. And they share that if you don't want to pay, if you wait a little while, if you're willing to wait, the prices will go down and you can refresh your screen. But it doesn't feel that way with Ticketmaster. It felt very much like a bait and switch. So I feel like they've kind of built that culture into it. And in today's world, we're all about FOMO and like missing out. And trust me, I've sat in Ticketmaster queues for days. And so I do think that we as customers have some responsibility in it as well.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I love that, Melissa, you're leading the conversation talking about transparency. And I completely agree with you. I mean, we're used to it. We expect it, like you said, with things like the ride shares, even the airlines, right? As we're getting closer to the holidays, we expect, as demand is going up, those prices might spike. And those are the types of things that, whether we like them or not, they make sense. But I think, the conversation kind of dovetails into like when the algorithm starts to charge you more and you can't quite explain why. Or, it's like, wait a minute, how did my friend across town get this deal and I didn't? Or I'm in a specific zip code and it didn't shake out for me. Right. And so then what you're creating is now a trust problem with the consumer or the public. Right. And that's I think the issue really here is like when folks can't tell the why. And when companies aren't transparent and, when we're starting to see like innovation and technology leading, which is great, but at the sake of fairness, that's when we start to have a problem. And when the consumer or the customer is definitely going to start to push back.
Right.
Well, and Elaine, how does trust play into this, with the companies that you've worked with and maybe worked with companies that have experimented with surge pricing or profited a great deal from it? What's the trust equation here?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're burning trust, right? If they're gonna just boost your price just because you really want something at that moment, you're gonna remember that next time. I mean, even with Uber, Melissa, you mentioned them that it's a little bit transparent, but it's also sometimes not. Like sometimes it'll have surge pricing for no reason at all, and then you just don't even want to use them anymore, right? So all of these companies are risking losing their customers. Like maybe Ticketmaster right now and for a long time has had this monopoly going so they can do it. But I hope that doesn't last forever because customers hate them and would do anything they could to not use them. So I think companies really risk churn. People are losing trust and they don't want to work with that brand anymore. And once they lose them, they'll be, once there's an alternative, they'll be gone.
There were some attempts in the mid late 90s or early 2000s to do alternates to Ticketmaster and more of a in-house type of ticketing or a simpler approach to it. But Ticketmaster's, now Ticketmaster is Live Nation, so you can't even go to one or the other. So if anything, they're stronger than ever. And whatever fees they choose to impose now with the transparency, consumer transparencies, Ticketmaster, Airbnb and other like you have to see those fees up front. You can't see them, tacked on at the end. So there's more visibility on those fees, but it doesn't mean those fees have gone away. So why, I guess why as consumers are we putting up with one conglomerate controlling everything, charging what they want. Why isn't someone challenging that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Ticketmaster owns a lot of the venues. And so they're in kind of a pretty unique situation. And why the government is letting this go on, I don't know. Somebody paid someone somewhere. So that they're a pretty unique situation. But even Airbnb now is getting some pushback, and people are saying that it's cheaper for me to go to a hotel.
Right.
So that's getting some brand erosion as well.
Yeah, I think that again, it goes to, and I don't know, transparency, but it's just like letting people know what the fees are, because I did see there was recently on social media a whole thing, Elaine, about Airbnb and the fees. And they were like, yeah, I was so excited. I had a beautiful Airbnb in the countryside. It was $150 for a night. And then I got my bill after 2 nights there, and it was $1,500, right? And they're thinking it's going to be like $300, $400, right? With a couple fees. But then the fees were so high. They were like, what a joke. I should have just gone to a hotel, right? Like where, the housekeeping is built into it, besides maybe if you're tipping the housekeepers or whatever, all those kinds of things. And so again, I think, the problem is the demand at Ticketmaster is high because they are the player, right? You have Ticketmaster and AEG, right? So for like live entertainment, those two pretty much take the cake. And then the other thing is all the bots that are getting in the queue before Qadira and I, so we can't get the tickets. And then you're actually ending up paying more by going to these resellers, right? And so I feel like Ticketmaster and Live Nation, which, I have connections to through my daughter, I feel very strongly that they need to be doing something about the resale market and the bots that are going in. Because, and I was one of those people that when Taylor Swift tickets went out, I was in queue for over 8 hours, had all the pre-code things, and never got a ticket. And I was just like amazed, because I was like, how in the heck is she selling out all over the world, which she did. And like these tickets are going, I spent thousands of dollars on a ticket, and my family was like, you're crazy. And I was, but I loved it. But again, it was really, it wasn't the artist saying, I want everybody to spend $2,000 for one ticket. I mean, she wanted the tickets to go but I think that the marketplace is really tough. And so, Aaron, like we try to put the clamps down on Ticketmaster, and yeah, they got their hand slapped and they're still getting sued, and the FTC is taking action against them. But like, really, like they're still like doing this. I mean, I have a perfect example. My husband yesterday was asking, he wanted to go see a concert in Denver. And he's like, I looked at the tickets like a month ago and they were $23.
Wow.
It's the same concert, right? Yeah. I mean, like what? They're not a big group. Like most people want to know. And I said, we're causing that with that high demand.
Yeah.
And I hate that I've had to go to these other resellers, but if you want to go, you have to you do what you have to do. But that again, it doesn't get past the whole, what is their operations? What is their culture? Qadira, like why would they change? Like, do they feel like they have a culture that needs to change? I mean, I don't, that's the name of the game, is to get all those seats sold. And it's, if people are willing to pay, that's a problem.
Taylor Swift in France, and it was cheaper to
Yeah.
fly to France and see her than you see her here.
Wow. That was originally my plan, my sister-in-law, and then go get tickets there. Yeah. And that's crazy.
Yeah.
Cheaper than going to the local place.
A monopoly, in quotes, is not such a bad idea if it benefits the consumer. So if Ticketmaster, or a company like Ticketmaster, has economies of scale And I could see them, everyone wins in that situation. But when it's a monopoly where the prices are not only high, but they're arbitrarily high, um, but it's a problem. And the reason I think we play into it is because we want things now. So if I get an artist presale code, I'm gonna go on and use it, and I'll probably pay, whatever that surge price is because I got my tickets, and I'm and that's, but same with Uber. Like they'll say, do you want a $15, a couple dollars, and write out 15 or 30 minutes later? Well, I don't. I want to go now. So that's the problem with the surge pricing is, well, we offer options and we offer, multi-tiered levels, and we take the customer into the equation, but it's going against our psychology. We want things now. So I don't want my pizza in 45 minutes with a discount. I don't want a cold pizza. I'm hungry. So yeah, that's why I think we keep lining up and playing into these things.
Yeah, I also think that you bring up a really good point, Aaron, is that if there were predefined events that cost, and they said, look, closer to the event, the price go up or go lower, or the price changes are based on capacity, right? Like if it's not sold out, like a lot of these events are not selling out these days, is what my understanding is. So if it's not selling out, they may say, hey, if we're only at 50% for our arena, we're going to have a level of changes in the price. We just don't really know. You're kind of like, what's going on? And I feel like even though we could say rideshares doing the surge pricing doesn't feel completely transparent because Elaine mentioned, right? Like it could be rain, it could be commute, who knows? It could be drivers calling out. It does feel a little bit more connected to the process than it does when you're sitting there and you're trying to plan for an event in, 6 months in the future. And you're like, I'm just trying to buy these tickets, right? I love this band, right? Or I love this show. I want to go to Broadway. I love this show or whatever it might be. So I do feel like, not knowing what the algorithm is that they're using to drive these micro fluctuations in price really, I think, drives the customer crazy because we're control freaks. We all want control.
Yes, absolutely. And I think too, we have to think about, when we talk about surge pricing, there's a group that's going to be penalized beyond just like, being the control freak and like, I want my pizza now, I want my Uber now, right? Like if we think about it, and Melissa, your point about culture and like why companies might be doing this, like, look, companies are in business to make money and to be efficient, but I think what can inadvertently happen, even with good intentions, is this whole conversation around inequity. And so if you've got, that shift worker who can't be on their phone all day, look, we all, as white collar workers, we've been able to kind of look at our phone and refresh the screen and all the things, but those shift workers can't do that. So what inequities are we creating there? Or, the parents or folks on fixed income. We're now talking about more of a systemic issue than just like, I want my tickets now. And I'm really upset that like, you know, Melissa paid more and I got it, even though I had a discount code. And so I think, when we talk about like surge pricing and urgency, we just have to keep in mind that like it's still a luxury, and it's not a luxury that everyone can manage. Everyone can't kind of jump in and be competitive. And in some ways it almost sometimes feels like a game. I mean, yeah, you can see the price going up and down, but it's like you said, okay, maybe I'll wait a few more minutes for my Uber and it'll go back down. But again, everyone doesn't have that luxury. And I think that that's something that companies do need to think about beyond just the pure economics. I think there is some responsibility in thinking about even that surge pricing. Again, when we can understand the why, okay, higher traffic, maybe that price is going to go up. We could think about the airlines. It's the holiday season. Okay, prices are going to go up. But again, as we keep saying, when we can't understand why, we also have to think about the impact to certain or specific communities. And so, when we talk about like, okay, so then, what might be the solution? Do they build in like caps? Should there be something like caps put into place? Again, we keep using the word transparency, and I think that is so important. Like, could we create some sort of transparency alerts that we get when we're using, these companies to purchase our tickets or, order our ride share or whatever? Do you give the user the option to lock in a stable price? It might be a gamble, right? Hey, this price could go down, but if you're comfortable locking in at $50 or $100, great. At least you've locked in your rate. So, I just think that when we talk about surge price, when we talk about the pricing, algorithms and all of those things, we have to keep in mind that technology sometimes can punish people for being busy. It can punish people for just not having the money to participate at that moment.
Yeah.
Or it's punishing people for hesitating, right? So, like, it's a big purchase. I'm not really sure. Oh my gosh, I want to follow up with my friends to see if they get tickets. It's all that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I've seen in the last couple years is airlines. They do a price protection lock. Have you seen that? Like well, I know United does that. So like if I'm like scanning for airline fares, right, to go from Denver to LA or whatever, and I find one that's pretty good. It seems pretty good, but I'm not really sure if those are the dates I want or whatever. It does have a price lock guarantee. I mean, I have to pay for it. It's nominal amount, like $5. Of course, they're going to make you pay for it, $5, but it will say like you can lock in that $250 fare, right?
Yep.
If for 24 hours or for 48 hours or something. And that gives you that time to kind of like get your bearings. And if you decide to, and the other thing is now they have, this is a thing that they do now too, is they used to not have this, but they have a 24-hour cancellation.
Right.
Where you get a full refund, right? Like and that used to be kind of the hesitancy, like the feeling that the customer has of hesitancy is like, oh my God, if I press buy, I'm stuck with this.
Yeah, but that's another way they're getting in is now you have to pay for the privilege for a cancellation fee. So like you see a rate for a hotel room and it's a luxury, nice hotel or whatever, great rate midweek, good, done. Okay, it's non-refundable unless you pay a $78 surcharge. Do you want the flexibility to cancel? Okay, well, now you're going to pay for it, right? You can cancel within 24 hours or some mandatory consumer protection law there. But if you want to cancel in 3 days because your plans changed, no, non-refundable. So you're paying, okay, that great rate is $78 more, however much, they throw on top of that just to give you flexibility in your lifestyle or for anything that happens to come up. Or you can pay for, the insurances or the other things that incrementally make your checkout, your basket or your checkout bigger by the time you're done. It's not the price you're seeing. Even with those protections where you can't put in the hidden fees, they still can upsell you on the way out.
Well,
But
they still
yeah,
undime you. I mean, we had talked about this. We talked about Southwest Airlines, for example, right? Like, and it's so funny, like their advertising is like getaway fares, right? $49 to get away. And like, I love like people putting down like, has anyone ever gone anywhere for $49? Because that's not true, right? Like, now they're charging for bags. So that now you have that. Now, it's like to get a seat. You don't want to sit in the middle in the back. You can pay to be at the front of the line. That's another, $55. And there's, early check-in is $15 each way. And so at the end of the day, it ends up being, you see them listing all those fees, but like, this advertising of like, it's a $49 fare to going away. And it's like, okay, well, I can't even take my purse. I don't even understand like how does that even work? Right. So I think you're right, Aaron. I mean, it's kind of your one way or the other. It's like, do you want to see all those? You do want to see all of those, is what we're saying.
yeah,
But like, don't you want those built in? And I feel like that's kind of what Ticketmaster is leaning on. They're like, oh, the reason we're so expensive is because all of these things are already built in. But like, you know, that's the thing that, the artists aren't making their money off of that. They're making their money off of merch sales and other things. They're not making their money off because it's all getting taken by Live Nation, right? That kind of thing.
yeah. Qadira, I want to go back to what you said because we were talking about the budgeting and creating the ability to be there in the moment. And we're talking maybe want to items or luxury items, or I don't have to go to that concert. But there's also dynamic pricing in grocery stores now, where the price of yogurt might fluctuate if I come back in an hour. So for people, I mean, this is for all of us, but for people on fixed incomes or household budgeting, like, how do you plan? Do I buy yogurt now, or do I buy milk now, or do I wait? Dynamic pricing has created a problem, like a systematic problem. Like, how do I even plan to make my money stretch through, again, people on fixed income, maybe through the week, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think that's exactly why, in these cases, like you said, there's some things that are luxury, right? Okay. Maybe, going to the Taylor Swift concert isn't in your budget. That's not a need. You can put that in the luxury bucket. Okay, fine, not going to happen. But exactly as you said, when it comes down to groceries, and we could start seeing, the digital price tag flipping up or down with your staples. We're talking about something completely different here. And I think we have to, when we talk about like the algorithm and things like that, we have to keep in mind that like the algorithm does not magically remove bias. It will amplify it, right? And so, when we're talking about, for example, collecting data, maybe you're collecting data on a specific zip code, and that grocery store in that zip code, we might surge the price, or maybe in this handful of neighborhoods, or maybe it's all of your stores. But again, think about the impact that it's going to have on disadvantaged people. So I think when we talk about this type of pricing, these types of models, all the things, this is not neutral. This can have very, very big consequences beyond, hey, I just want that luxury item and I want it now. Or, Melissa, you're a really great point. I've been guilty of that, of like trying to wait for my friends to see if they're going to buy it. Is the price going to go up or down? And it, is about convenience or hesitancy. We're talking about people's livelihood here.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point. So there's a difference between dynamic pricing and kind of what I would call surveillance pricing, which is really more around the data, like and Qadira, that fails the test of integrity, right? Because that's the point that we're talking about. Because that doesn't, it's not, people understand demand and surge pricing when, like, okay, fares in summer are going to be higher. We understand that. We understand the commute fares. We understand even like, hey, when I go for lunch, there's going to be a lunchtime special, right? We all understand that those are very specific. But what we reject is when it feels a little personal. The pricing is based on my own data and discriminates and exploits me and my situation. So that is not a great scenario. And I think that one of the areas that I've seen there's been a lot of discussion about, and I know I shouldn't, Aaron will slap my hand on this, but everything that you see on TikTok is not true. Okay. But is that, airlines raising fees and fares for someone who is searching for a last minute funeral flight, right? Or something like that. That's the nightmare scenario that, we know the government and regulators are trying to mobilize against. But that's again where it feels like integrity means the price is fair for the context, not just for the person, and using all of these other things, using all these other data points, Qadira, that you mentioned, because our data is out there and it is being used. So using your browsing history, using your zip code, using, your credit scores, all the things, that's a violation of trust that really doesn't feel great as a consumer. And I know companies are digging deep into the data, right? That's what they're doing. And so we really have to understand, like, how does that impact, to Qadira's point, like the integrity of what's happening, in the marketplace.
Well, Elaine, Elaine, I'll throw it to, is it a violation, or is it monetization? If you know data points on your customers and you can tailor your pricing according to their needs and their wants, can you do that?
Well, I think probably most CFOs and CEOs and boards would say, yeah, let's get, and investors, obviously, they want to make profit. So they would say, yeah, let's get every penny out of every person that we can get. But I'm a little different than that. I don't really I, I mean, sure, I want to make profit. I want my companies to be profitable. I want them to be operating. I want them to be able to pay their employees a living wage and all of those things. But I think that you really are risking, again, the trust, as we've all talked about, the trust of the customer. And that's to have your company, have your customer trust your company is a huge asset. I mean, that's great. Like, I'm going to always buy from this store because I love this store and they're good to me, right? As opposed to, well, I guess I have to get my tickets from this place until there's somebody else that can sell me a ticket, right? Having the customer love you and be loyal to you is valuable. And I think they're really risking that. And as soon as something else comes along, those customers are going to leave. Or they'll find another way. They'll skip that concert, or they'll skip that event they were going to that they needed Uber for, or they'll drive themselves or whatever. The customers will find another way and will leave. And so I don't know if companies that do this kind of, that are looking to get every last penny out, if they're really analyzing or forecasting the churn that they're going to have in the future from just this loss of customers saying, we just don't like you anymore. We just don't want to deal with you. So they need to keep that on their radar too. I don't love the whole personalized pricing thing. Unless they have a price and they're giving me a discount, I'll take that. But I don't like it the other way.
Yeah, I think the surveillance, the profiling, Melissa, that brought up, or I think it's spot on. And I think, when we start looking at, it's one thing, like you said, okay, we see the surge price, or we can understand why certain things are going up or down or whatever. But I think when we start hearing about, look, the fact is there are profiles on all of us. If we've used any sort of, smartphone or technology, laptop, whatever, there is a profile on us based on our shopping. But again, I think we have to keep in mind that, like, what is starting to bubble up is like these demographic signals, these demographic identifiers. And let's be real, we sometimes in a city by zip code, we can tell a lot about, that group's income, race, all the things. And what you're going to have is, that data then ends up sorting people into, like, you're a high value group that I might give a discount to. You're a low value group. I really don't care about you. Maybe you're not even our target. We'll take your money, but you're not even exactly who we would want to shop with us. Right. And now we are seeing that some folks are seeing, these higher prices, fewer deals, not because of anything they did. We're making assumptions about them. But this is more about, again, this starts to get into that whole conversation about systems issues and equity, who's going to be left out, who's not. That's, I think, when companies, Elaine, to your point, like, if the customer does leave or the public does start to, kind of have this public outcry, or there is backlash, what we are seeing with companies more and more is, once that starts to happen, it's not that you can't regain that trust, but it's going to be a lot harder. So it almost comes down to, like, how do you, do the right thing up front. We keep underscoring transparency. We keep underscoring fairness. We keep underscoring, like, help the customer and consumer understand why will go a long way. Because, exactly to the points we've made earlier, once your integrity is questioned, once you start to lose, certain groups of people, or there's backlash, you're going to have a much harder time trying to dig yourself out of and get folks to come back to you.
I love what Elaine said and what you said just now, Qadira. It's made me really, because in my space, and I know, Erin, you do a lot of this customer persona work too in marketing and branding.
Yeah.
It's so important to understand, the customer segment that your group is in. So, overall, like, those data points are so important, and it is important for growth, retention, profitability for a company. You need to know your customers, what their likes are, what their dislikes are, where to meet them, what their, what's that tipping point from a price perspective, right? And renewal and retention is the backbone of a successful company. So the question really is around equity, because when you segment customers, you're doing this because you understand that customers are all different. They all have that. And so we are using those data points to segment our customers and say, okay, we know this kind of customer, does this and has these shopping habits and has this kind of disposable income or doesn't, use these subsidies or doesn't, right? Uses public transportation or not, all the things. And so I do think that it's about creating a strategy that provides a level of equity across those segments, Qadira, that we were talking about, right? But at the same point, we have so many companies out there, and a lot of them are niche companies, right? And so they don't really care about these segments of customers because that's not who they're trying to sell to, right? And I get that. And they're pricing themselves outside of that market. But, when you think about something like a Ticketmaster that is supposed to be for the masses and really is one of the only choices out there, they do, I think, have a corporate responsibility to be able to understand how to make it as fair as possible. And again, it's not necessarily that I feel like, okay, that they need to like price check everything, but I do feel like they need to figure out how to put that framework in place to make it happen. I mean, it's funny because it happens all over. It happens
Mhm.
in every aspect of our lives today. I like to use this story. My daughter is a senior in college here at CU Boulder, and since Coach Prime came, everything has changed, right? So student section sold out of every football game, da 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 da. And so now they have to queue up for tickets, even though they got a pass, which they had to queue up this summer for, and not everybody got the passes, of course. And it's one of those things that, like, my daughter was like, I'm a senior. I should not have had to queue up at 7 a.m. and then maybe not get a ticket like her roommate didn't get a ticket, right? And I'm like, well, the problem is that's not how they set this up. They set it up as the queue opens and who's got their credit card ready to go and paying, and that's what they took the first 20,000 kids and that's it. And even though there's, way more kids at the school. So it's a life lesson. We're all learning how to live through this. But I do think that there's going to be a component of it where, like, there has to be some corporate responsibility to of checks and balances.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think, look, just like their financial audits, Elaine, there almost needs to be, like a audit of the algorithm, right? I mean, they're, we talk about social responsibility and the kind of the governance in all of this. Absolutely. And I think you raise a really good point, Melissa, just, like the company understanding who their target customer is, and that there's entire departments on understanding who your customer is. And it's absolutely fair that, like, everyone is not your customer. But I think, exactly to your point, there are some companies that are for the masses, and we need to be thinking about where and how that shows up, luxury versus, the needs. And so, yeah, I think, there absolutely needs to be a team, or, whoever is responsible for just thinking about, accountability and fairness in the product, in the tool, should absolutely be thinking about, are we, exacerbating systemic issues? Regardless, our customer might be, a seven-figure earner. But, is there any sort of, even unintentional harm? Because again, you're going to have a PR nightmare if there's some sort of, unintended consequence, even if, your buyer is this kind of elite. But if there's some unintentional harm and the general public gets a hold of it, you're going to have a mess. So I think it's just easier to kind of have those internal checks and balances and audits and start asking those questions, as you're building your product, your tool, your service.
Yeah.
Elaine, are companies thinking in that kind of along those lines? Is there anyone checking for systematic bias or writing the algorithms and tweaking them accordingly?
I wish I could say yes. I mean, I hope that's happening just outside of my awareness. I mean, it hasn't. I haven't seen a lot of that. A lot of times the algorithm and stuff is all owned by tech, right? And there's not a lot of HR or even customer success involved in that. And it's a little bit early days also for these kinds of algorithmic price changes. So it might take some time, but definitely somebody needs to be looking at that. And I wouldn't even, I think that could also be part of their annual audit. As you mentioned, that I mean, they do audit technology. So maybe some of the big four are also auditing the algorithms, but I don't know if they're, I just want to say profit is not bad. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't want these companies to be profitable.
Of course.
I just want to, because I feel like I'm very much leaning on the customer side and not enough on the company side. But I do want the companies to be profitable. We just also want them to retain that trust and to retain that bond with their customers.
Yeah, I think it's a new age for companies. I think that having the voice of the customer being so strong has been and powerful, right? The cancel culture is very strong. Like there's a lot of things going on now that weren't happening, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And I love what you said. I actually was going to bring this up, Elaine, because I was in a meeting and I love this. Our VP of sales said, hey, because we were talking about something. I don't know what it was. It was probably around CX because I was in the meeting and he always gave me a hard time. And he's like, we're not a nonprofit. So that thing that you want to do, like, yeah, that's great. Good for you. But we're not a nonprofit. And I actually have used that same line in conversations with my team when we had to make some tough decisions and things like that, because it is true. You're a business and you're in there to make money. And the, and the thing like that's unfortunate, like going back to Ticketmaster is that the people are still will still pay. I mean, I'm one of those people. I'll still pay and it sucks, but I think that that's the thing that like, until like there's a rebellion, like why do they really need to change? And like, even though the laws are changing, they're having to do price transparency. They're like, okay, but we're still going to charge $125 for that ticket that, you know,
Yeah.
Or an alternative.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have an alternative. So if you want to participate or you want that item or you want that service or goods or, software, you that's what you're going to pay. And so that's kind of the thing. I mean, you look at where we are today as a society and we want nice things, and like we're kind of cornered. Like I always laugh. I'm like, don't you find it interesting how your iPhone battery starts dying like right a month before the freaking new iPhone that's another $2,000 comes out? Like I'm like, seriously? Like I don't want a new iPhone, right? That, but like that's the thing is that like, but we all do it. And so I do agree. I mean, companies are in there and they're not doing this because just for their own, like, we think this is a great idea. They're getting paid. People are paying for it. So
Yeah.
we have that's why I'm saying that customers have some responsibility. That I know we can be unhappy with something, and we have driven there to be more transparency with the tickets with Ticketmaster, but at the same time, I don't think it's changed how they're approaching their pricing, honestly.
Well, let's fix it. It's time. So do we, not a whole lot to pull back together here, but we're talking about transparency and having some understanding about what the fee structure is and what the fluctuations are. It's making me think of there's a thrift shop near me where it's a cool place and they have items like their higher ticket items. They'll say, look, here's the price today. Like I want it now, give it to me. If it's still here in a week, we're going to drop it by 15%. If it's here in 2 weeks, we're going to drop it by 50%. If here, 2 months from now, it's 75% off. It's yours. Basically, walk away with it. So, yeah, I wonder if there's something like that we could put into the equation. But I think what we're saying overall is don't exploit your customers. If you're going to use customer data and individualized data points, use it for the benefit of your customers. So use it to offer them discounts or experiences that are tailored to them, or understanding recognition of their buying habits and things that they'll want. Don't use it the other way to drive prices up and to create these individualized pricing situations where I'm going to pay way more than you and we're both going to go to the same show and sit next to each other. That doesn't seem right. And then if you are going to use these fluctuations, take into account the fairness, the equity of it, because you might make a unilateral decision and you think, oh, okay, good, all of our customers are going to do the same thing, fluctuates at the same time, but you might be punishing a significant portion of your customer base for these luxury want to, sounds fun type of items, and also the daily staple goods. So we're talking dynamic pricing tags at the grocery store on bread and milk and yogurt and things that people need for want or depend on for their diapers, for their household. You have to have some kind of predictability in order to to make it in this world at lots of different levels. So if we put those into the equation, hand them back to Ticketmaster and others and say, look, we understand customized pricing, dynamic pricing, even surge pricing, we can get behind. Obviously we keep lining up and paying it. But there are some guardrails you have to follow. Here they are. Qadira, did we fix it?
I don't know. I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. I think the things that, we've outlined here over the last, 45 minutes, hour or so, it's not, what's the saying? It may not be that easy, but it's that simple. There was a couple of things that we called out kind of over and over and over again. And I think companies have to decide, do they want to do them or not? Melissa, you raise a great point. It's a new day. And so we have had those conversations about companies that failed to lean into the times. And a year, 2, 5 years from now, we will be talking about them in the past tense for some of these very reasons. I think just, purely from a CSR, social responsibility, social impact, doing good perspective, we have to keep in mind that companies can do good and do well at the same time. Like that's the whole purpose for those departments existing, and really should be partnering with the business to make sure that you're leveraging who the company is and how you're going to show up for your stakeholders. And by doing good, you're actually creating reputational halo. That creates trust with your customers. Therefore, they're going to buy from you, right? So let's keep in mind that fairness and transparency and asking those questions when it comes to equity, they're hard, but like that's what's going to be your differentiator from your competition. Because let's use Ticketmaster. Might not have a competitor right now, but someone's coming. Right. And so you got, how many years head start? Why not just make the change now? Why not start talking about transparency? Why not saying, hey, customer, we heard you and here's what we are going to do differently? So that's why, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we've given some great fixes. It's now up to the companies to say, yeah, we're going to lean in, or no, we're not going to do anything differently.
Take that, Ticketmaster. I like it. Melissa, did we fix?
I think that we brought up some really good points, and I am with Qadira. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think the all-in upfront price transparency and mandating that, just like you have nutrition labels on food, like let's do that on all of those types of things, especially on like tickets and services and goods, that you can do that. Hotel rooms, plane tickets, things like that. I also like this idea of kind of implementing schedule demand corridors so that you understand when the surge is happening and why, so that there's really like clear explainable metrics and predefined price change thresholds, so that it's very clear to the customer, and so then they can make the decision, because again, we like to be in control, right? So I love like having that clearly outlined would be great, because Erin, like going to the grocery store and not understanding that that's what's happening is really it's confusing to the consumer, right? Like, why is this so much more than I got it last week and it had nothing. It was not even close. So I think that, also removes some of that personal component of it. It's still based on the whole customer segment and that whole customer journey, but it takes away that feeling of discrimination against a personal customer there. And then I do like the price protection guarantee because I do feel like that also provides control to the consumer. For those folks that hesitate, the hesitation penalty, like, can't make up their mind penalty that I have sometimes. So I do like that. And you see that with Aaron, your example at this thrift store. I mean, eBay has that too, where it's like buy now, right? There's a price, you can buy it now, or Poshmark or wherever you go. So I love that ability to have that choice. But again, that's very clearly outlined and understood, and you understand what you're paying for. So
Okay.
those are my thoughts.
Okay. So I think we're saying overall, teach your customers and teach your consumers how to navigate the situation and how to play by the rules that you're setting out. And so I'll ask you, Elaine, but I also wonder one last thing: is it the company's responsibility to teach the consumers, or is there someone else? Is there another board or consumer protection agency or something that should step in and play that role, or can companies be trusted to to create those protections and those education tools themselves?
Um, I don't know if I would trust companies. I would challenge these companies though to add some of the things you're talking about, some of these tools that to see when prices are going to go up or down, or adding the option to buy now or cancel later, whatever. To add some of that into their portals, into their tech, right? Because they're mostly not. That's not really. They're really focusing right now on let's raise prices and get all the money we can. But I would really challenge their tech teams to put in something that can earn some trust with the customer. That says, okay, this is surging now, like you guys mentioned, like this is surging now, but come back in half an hour and it might not be, or whatever. And I love the thrift store suggestion too. As you were saying that, I was thinking, oh, I would probably buy it then, but at least I had the option, right? So so I don't personally, again, this is probably not a popular thing for a CFO to say. I wouldn't probably trust the companies to monitor themselves on that. Kind of what is it, the fox guarding the hen house or something. But I would like to see that part of audits and even just part of the conversation. I don't think people really talk about it inside of companies. They're just talking about, oh, look, we made more.
Thank you, Elaine. And it's clear we need to keep talking about this and keep, companies need to be, with the transparency part, need to keep opening the conversation up and saying, look, we're going to try something experimental. We'll see if you like it. We'll see if it benefits you. If not, we may go another way. But to keep it behind, a locked door and no transparency from the outside about how these algorithms work or the decisions they're making, especially as AI plays more and more of a factor here. And we all know our data is out there, but is being used against us as opposed to for us. Well, we may have solved some of it, but we'll keep talking about it and see what companies do. It's balls in their court.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're about to cash out on this episode of We Fix It, You're Welcome. Before we do, let's give thanks and appreciation to our guest, Elaine Bogart. Elaine, where can people learn more about you or keep up with what you're doing?
Thank you for having me. It was really great to meet all you, and this conversation was really interesting and fun for me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Elaine Bogart. You could find me there. I have a website, finerax.com.co also, but LinkedIn is probably best.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Elaine. Thank you, as always, Qadira and Melissa, top notch. If you are one of our new listeners, my name's Aaron. Nice to meet you. If you want to reach out to any of us panelists or explore our past episodes or send us a topic that you've been thinking about, go to wefixeditpod.com. If you like what we're doing, be sure to tell everyone you know until they're like, all right, we'll listen to your show. And then they listen and then they enjoy it. And then you feel great about yourself. So you need what, like a week to get that done? All right, we'll meet you back here in a week, and we will see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of We Fixed It, You're Welcome. We go into every episode somewhat cold, and nothing we say should be construed as legal advice, financial advice, or anything that would get us in trouble. All trademarks, IP, and brand elements remain property of their respective owners.